In this video, we're going to go over how to incorporate some of the OST test items into your classroom. So the first one that we're going to go over is the evidence-based selected response. So this is a question where it requires students to answer a two-part question. And basically it looks like the first part A is answer a question and part B is kind of justifying or giving evidence as to why they selected the first one. So the best way to incorporate this in your classroom would be to first, in a Microsoft Word document, type out your answers. And if you want it to look just like the actual test, you can do part A, and even if you want to, it looks like it's kind of highlighted. And part B. And again, all I did is just type these up like you would a regular assignment. And for these, I just used the bullet point button at the top and selected. But as you will see, it doesn't really matter what you select. The next thing you're going to do is you're going to save it as Adobe PDF. It will probably automatically open up for you, but what I want you to do is go ahead and close it because we're going to open it up with Adobe Acrobat DC. So once it's saved, you're going to right click, open with, and you'll notice that you have several selections, or you should have. Adobe Reader is what students use, but we're going to actually open it with Adobe Acrobat DC. And that's going to allow us to turn these questions so that students can click on them. So once you have that open in Adobe Acrobat Pro DC, you're going to click on Prepare Form. And it should already be selected with the form. Click Start. And you'll notice at the top now you have options of things that you can add. So if you remember, the first one has radio buttons and the second one has check marks. And it's important that you follow this form because the radio buttons allow students to select only one item, while the check marks will allow them to select more than one item. So for the radio buttons, I'm simply going to just click on at the top. That turns my mouse into a blue square, and I will click to the left of the answer. Now this is very important. You want to add another button. Don't click off of it and go back up to the top. We want these to all be grouped together again so that the student can only select one item. I would suggest not renaming anything. You could, that's a little more in-depth directions, but I would just leave everything exactly how it is. But at the bottom, click on Add Another Button, and then your mouse will have another square that you can add. Add another one, and add another one. And then you can click off of it once they're all added. Now if you're like me, you want to have this lined up nicely. So if you hold down your Shift key and select all of them, then you can let go of the Shift key, right click, and it gives you this align, and you can just like align left or align right, and they'll get all lined up nicely. And you can also right click and you can distribute them vertically, and that just kind of makes sure that they're all spaced evenly. For the second part, again, the second part is going to be check marks. This is done close to the same way. You're going to click on Add the check mark box at the top. But for this one, we're going to go back and we're going to grab another one. because these are not grouped. These are all separate. And then again, hold your Shift key, right click, and line those up. Once you're done with this, you can go over to the right and preview, and that will show you what it's going to look like. Make sure to save. You're going to replace the existing file. And then always go back and check to make sure that it works. And this is, notice it opened up an Adobe Reader. That's what the students have. And now you can check it out. I can only select one of these radio buttons. And for part B, I can select multiple answers. In your directions, when you make your Word document, at the bottom, you may want to include to remember to save and turn into the Dropbox. Because there may be some students, unfortunately, who think that all they need to do is just click on this and somehow it magically gets to the teacher. So you may want to add that to the bottom of the document. Now, the next one we're going to look at is the table item. And this is fairly simple. Again, just using Word. You can easily make a table in Word. And the easiest way to do that is just to go up to Insert and down to Table and just select as many as you need. With your mouse, you can easily rearrange your table to make it smaller if you want to do it like the example. I would imagine this may be more for a math class, but if you do want to add symbols, an easy way would be if you hold down your Alt key on your keyboard and then use your number pad. That was a 6. This is a 3. That's just a way to make some little symbols if that's what you want. But making a table in Word is very easy, especially because if you look at the example, it's not very fancy. It looks like the items are centered. Actually, I believe the title was left justified. So making a table in Word is very simple, and that is how I would suggest using that item. Now, the constructed response item, this is where the students type their response into the text box provided. And this is probably something that can very easily be added into your classroom. If you already have short answer or extended response questions, if you want to add this in your classroom, again, it's as simple as using Word. And what I did is I just took a screenshot of the directions. It just tells them to type their answer into the text box. Something that I would highly suggest is starting to use the same terminology as the OSTs. So for example, they're asking to explain why. So that would be great to start using that in your vocabulary. Explain this, explain why this, explain why that. And then support your answer. So that's a very easy way to start getting that students used to that vocabulary. And this can easily be added again to any of your current assignments. Just try to look at using some of this vocabulary. And if you want to add the box that they're going to type in, just to kind of get them used to typing in a box, the easiest way to get a box in Word is, again, to go to Insert and Text Box and go down to Draw Text Box, and you'll have this little plus sign, and you just click with your mouse and you can drag it. And once you let go, you can still kind of reorganize it to make it the size that you want. Remember too, we're so used to using our assessments in iQity as just very simple, easy question answer. But in iQity, there's a lot that you really can do. You can write several paragraphs, add pictures, videos. A lot of teachers don't like to have to grade assessments. They like it to be auto-graded, but sometimes students may actually do an assessment more than open up a Word document, type it, save it, turn it into the Dropbox. So another option is to put some of those assignments into an assessment in iQity, and that will give students practice in actually typing answers into or onto a assessment. So this is just an example. This is a short answer assessment that has been done in iQity. And students would actually type the answer and submit, and they won't have to worry about using the Dropbox and typing on a document. But of course, as a teacher, you would have to go and grade these. So just remember that those are always options as well. Okay, so the next one is matching items. And this is where students are going to answer questions by clicking on a box in a table to select their answer. So if you look at this example, you'll notice that it's just a few words. But remember, in your classroom, you can also do the options of having definitions. So how I did this was in Microsoft Word, I made a table, and you just go that by going up to Insert and Table, and you can easily select how many cells you want. Also, once you've made your table, it's easy to edit using the Layout tab. It's easy to delete or insert. But once you've entered all of the information, then all you have to do is add the checkmark boxes. Now that can be a little more difficult. So what you can do to make it easy is if you go to your File tab and go down to Options, and I'm actually doing this in Microsoft Word 2013. I know some teachers now have 2016. Hopefully it's pretty similar. But if you go to Customize your ribbon, and then on the right-hand side, it is not usually checkmarked, but checkmark the Developer tab and click on OK. And then you have a new tab with more features. So under the Developer tab, you'll have the option to just simply, easily click on Add a Checkmark. Since I already did up there, I'm not going to do it again, but you can easily click on that button, and that will add the check mark for you, and students can click on these. Instead of going to every single cell, what I did is I actually, after I did a couple, I just selected it and copied and then went through and pasted it. That made it a lot faster. So then when students do it, all they have to do is click on, they can click on or click off of those checkboxes to, I know for me, this was so plain, I really wanted to go in and add a design or do something with it. But if we're trying to stay true to the example, it's just pretty plain. So probably what I would want to do if I'm trying to make it look the same is change the color here. And then these check mark boxes are very tiny. These check mark boxes are very tiny. So I'm just going to select them and go up. And if you change the font size, that's actually going to make your check mark boxes bigger. So make it look a little better. And just like you would a font, if you want them bold or different color, you would change that the same way. The next one is the grid item. And this is where students place and move objects on an answer space. This is a little bit like drag and drop. I'm assuming that most electives teachers aren't going to be using a graph. I'm going to show you an example of how to do without the graph. So for this one, something that you need to remember is when you are searching for an item to use, if you want a picture that doesn't have white on the background, so for example, if I'm going to click on this and drag it, if there were white on the background, it would look pretty bad. So what you're going to look for is called a PNG or PNG. So when you're looking for pictures to use in your assignment, look for PNG. Also, a good thing to do is when you're searching in Google, if you click on the little tools button, go down and click on labeled for reuse. And that way you're not going to have items that have watermarks that look awful on if you're reusing them. And also that way you're just making sure that you're not using a copyrighted picture. Now, for example, this is what I used for the easel. You can easily right click and copy the image. You'll see when I paste this item, it had these two pictures and I only wanted the one on the right. Now, if you know how to use Photoshop program, you can easily take it out using that. I personally just like to do it right here in Word. If you click on the picture and go up to Format, on the left-hand side there's a Remove Background button. If you click on that, anything that's inside of this square is what it's going to keep. And then hit Keep Changes. I just find that a lot easier to do it that way. Also, if you did have clip art that did have that white background or had a background that you didn't want to use, this is also a very easy way to make it so that your clip art that you're using doesn't have a background. So then, very important, you want to click on your picture and go to the Format tab. And you want this to be behind text, because you want that to be on the bottom. So notice up here, I want to be able to put pictures on top of that. Now my paint brushes, I just went to Google, found a PNG file, copy and pasted. Once they were in my Word document, these ones I wanted to go in front of the text because these are going to be the pictures that I'm sliding around on top of the text. And then finally, because I'm trying to duplicate the way that the test would look, I kind of gave it a gray area like this has down at the bottom, and that's where I put my little pictures. And in order to do that gray area, you can just go to Insert, Shapes. I just clicked on the square or the rectangle. And then you can change that to a different color. Now, this you will also have to right click on and send it to the back. That way that's all the way at the bottom. And once that's in position, you can drag your other pictures on top, and students should be able to drag the items onto the picture. Now, the next item is multiple choice. And this obviously is going to most easily be done having assessments in your classroom. I already showed you how you could do these using Adobe by first going into Microsoft Word, typing up your quiz, and then saving it as a PDF. But obviously the easiest way to do this is just to keep your assessments in your classroom. Now, something that many teachers don't know is that there is a multi-select option in iQuity for assessments. This is something that the content developers will have to do for you. So this is something that you'll have to turn in and have the content developers do in the assessment. But just be sure to know that at this point, the way iQuity works is, let's say that your student has to select 2 correct answers. You can make this worth 2 points. However, at this point in iQuity, it's an all or nothing. Students either will get them both right and get 2 points, or get 1 right and they will get 0 points. So they have to get both of them correct in order to get those 2 points. Something else that you could do in your classroom, again, this is on the content developer's end, but if you do have self-checks in your lessons, you can also make a self-check question so that students need to choose more than one answer. The next item is the hot text item, and this is where students will drag or select the word or group of words that they want to move. Again, easily in Microsoft Word, you could have students ask them to just use the highlighting tool and to highlight certain things. Now in iQuity, if a student is taking an assessment, they can actually highlight to help them organize or as they're reading the questions. However, that's not something that they can save. We can't actually make that a part of the question, but it's a great idea to just let students know that and kind of get them used to highlighting. The other part of the hot text item is selecting a word or group of words that they want to move. And again, using Microsoft Word, this is showing one way that students could do that. So what I did here is, here's a question for the students, and what they need to do, the definitions and the words are down at the bottom. So what they would need to do is click on those words and put them in the correct slot. So in order to do this in Word, obviously just typing the first part of the information is quite easy. And then again, to kind of just make it look like having a different color background, what you can do is, as I did earlier, go up to Insert and pick on a shape. Just make that shape. Choose whatever color, probably gray or light blue is what the example showed. And then very important, right click, and when you send back, you want to send behind text. And that's so when you start typing, you can actually type the definition on it. After you have the definition or the words or whatever you want the students to drag, you're going to use your snipping tool. And this is where you're going to just go ahead and that's going to be the actual object that the students will move. After you go through and snip every single one, you'll have to click again on each object go up to Format, and again, this wants to be, you want to make sure that this is behind text. You can actually do behind or in front of, it doesn't matter, but you have to do one so that you can pick up and drag it to the top. That's it for the OST item ideas. If you're interested in learning more about all the things you can do with Adobe Pro DC, go to your lynda.com account, look at your ECOT approved courses that you've been given, and there is a training called Acrobat DC Create Forms. It's an hour and a half long, but it is well worth it. If that's something that interests you, there are tons of things that you can do in PDFs that you probably didn't know you could even do.